All right, welcome to round number one. We are on the draw here. Our opponent has kept their hand, and our hand looks pretty good. Pretty happy to keep a hand with Blood Moon and some cantrips. And lands to back it all up. All right, looks like some Eldrazi Tron. So hopefully we'll be able to get a Blood Moon in play before too much damage is done, and then maybe our opponent will not have a wastes. If they do not have a basic, or a wastes rather, they will have a hard time casting a lot of their Eldrazi. They still have outs to Moon. Backup Moon is kind of nice because it means that if they do have Thought-Knot Seer before we're able to resolve this Moon, we have another one. So I'm going to start with Serum Visions here, which is a little bit awkward because if I top, I may just end up waiting on this Opt. Not that big of a deal, but something to keep in mind. I definitely want this Flooded Strand, as I need this Scalding Tarn as a red source and would like to have at least 2 islands before I'm Blood Mooning if possible. This Click is probably also fine, but one of the few cards my opponent can cast very easily through Blood Moon and use their mana for is Ballista, which maybe makes this Click a little questionable, but I think it's probably a top for now, which is exactly what I was saying about the Opt. So we're just going to have to hold off on the Opt for a little bit, which is not a huge deal, but if I was really that worried about it, I could have led on Opt on this turn cycle, but using the Serum Visions at Sorcerer Speed on turn 1 is where it's going to be less punishing in theory, right? We could easily want to be holding up something like Remand alongside Opt this turn, depending on how that Serum Visions goes, or our draw step, or what have you. But so we're going to play this and assumedly not crack to get that, leave that thing on top there, that Click on top. Now if something goes, if our opponent commits like Thought-Knot Seer, maybe even another Mana Reshaper, maybe that Click is too late. Maybe we're not going to want that Click. I guess if it's another Mana Reshaper, I probably still want the Click since it can trade. If it's Thought-Knot Seer this turn, it's possible I want to fetch and try to draw, like, I was going to say Bolt, but I imagine my opponent would be taking my Snapcaster with their Thought-Knot. Alright, they just say go. So this is a little bit unfortunate in the sense that I guess I'd like to draw that Click still. In the sense that my opponent's going to be able to go find a basic wastes on this turn cycle. I'm really worried about my opponent getting that basic wastes off Expedition map. So I think I'm supposed to click them in their draw step this turn cycle, stop anything really punishing from happening, and then try to Blood Moon the following turn cycle. Guess this also gives me an opportunity to draw another fetch land to have another basic land, but if my opponent has like multiple smashers in their hand, this is really bad for me. But if they have multiple smashers in their hand and I just play Blood Moon this turn, I don't get a lot of time either, so I think I'm going to go for this. But it's possible I'm supposed to just Slam Moon here. I just really want them to go get something else other than a basic wastes. So they got Cavern of Souls. That's much better for me. Put this over here. Even though my opponent probably is going to play it immediately. Click our opponent. Even more valuable with when our opponent has Cavern. So they do just have the one Smasher, plenty of lands, but no waste. And they do have this annoying Ballista that we would have liked to take. But I can't really let my opponent Smasher us here, so I basically have to take that. Let me snip their hand real quick since this doesn't stay in the revealed zone. Just grab that real quick. Take the Smasher. Alright. Cross that out on my little snip here. Opponent plays another Eldrazi Temple. And apparently drew an Eldrazi. That's really good. Yeah, that's unfortunate. So it's obviously if they had drawn that a turn later, they wouldn't be able to cast it. Opponent takes snap. No big surprise there. They're going to go ahead and Ballista for 1, I guess. No, they may have changed their mind. Yes, they're going to Ballista for 1. See if they use it to kill my click here and get me for 3. Okay, they do. Well, we got the Ballista off the table. I'm kind of okay with that. But we are going to have to figure out a way to deal with these. And we don't have a good way to do that since we lost our Snapcaster. So here I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to fetch for that 3rd basic island to allot me Cryptic, and whether it's worth putting myself dead to... I think it is. I guess I should opt first. Don't know what I would draw. Maybe a Snapcaster block opt. Then I'm giving. I mean, my opponent has no cards in their hand, so they're top decking anyway. Okay, so I have nothing else to do with the mana anyway, so we'll go ahead and Blood Moon. To at least cut them off of doing anything interesting here. And I guess if I let them untap with this Ghost Quarter with the way that I fetch, they could cut me off of red. So, alright, Cavern, and before anyone freaks out, the Magic Online has not changed the Blood Moon ruling yet. Alright, we died. So our opponent did still get to name a creature type. For anyone who's not familiar, in paper, I believe it has already... you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the rules change has already occurred with the release of Ixalan that affects lands, like Blood Moon affects lands as they come into play, not just when they're in play. So something like Vesuva, Cavern, these things you won't name something for Cavern, you won't copy something with Vesuva if there's a Blood Moon in play. With a shock land, you won't have the option to shock. It will just come into play tapped because it's just a mountain, not a shock land. So that has been changed to paper, but has not yet happened on Moto. So for anyone who's like, hey, wait, that's not quite right. Why did they get to name a creature type? Magic Online is just not there yet, but hopefully soon. I know we have a downtime this week, maybe then. So we've got Roasts, Rejections. Both of those are great here. I don't like Anger. Byforce is okay, and for anyone, I know we talked about it a little bit, but just as a quick reminder, if you didn't catch the deck tech, Byforce, Overshadowing Spree, because we have a hard time producing a lot of red mana, because we're often fetching islands to protect ourselves from Blood Moon. We have no double red spells, stuff like that. So Shattering Spree can be tough. Similarly, Anger can actually be tough from time to time, but a little less of a concern since we only need definitely 2 sources. Byforce, though, a little bit of a worse answer to Chalice. It's harder to manipulate the X on Byforce because we require our opponent to have more artifacts. I do not like Spell Snare here. It can hit Chalices, but other than that, not great. Lightning Bolts are pretty weak, and we want to kind of cut ones against the Chalice deck. So it's probably going to be Bolts, especially when I'm bringing in Roasts and Rejections. So let's start with those. I'm also not big on these Electrolyzes here, but at least they're not going to get Chaliced. They can trip, and I got to have a way to deal some extra damage. Wouldn't hate shaving on a Snapcaster here, especially when I'm on no bolts. I could see putting in like 1 explosives, but really that's only an answer to Chalices. I mean, yes, it answers multiple Chalices at once, which is nice, but is that better than any of these? I'm not so sure. I think we're probably just going to want the snaps and electrolyzes since they are both pretty likely to cantrip. And for me, when in doubt, when I have the option between a card that's not so great and a card that's not so great, I'll probably take the one that draws a card. And I think that's kind of the situation that we're in here. So we're going to go ahead and submit as is. Close this snip here that we no longer need. All right, we're on the play. This hand is pretty weak. We have a roast, which is good against our opponent, and half of our A plus B combo. The other advantage of this hand is that we do get to get 3 basic islands, no problem. I'm still going to mulligan this, though. It just doesn't do enough. This hand I will keep. It's just a little bit better than our last hand. It's nice, too, that even though we are slightly land heavy, that allows us to cast our Cryptic and already gets us into Desolate Lighthouse range. I don't want to be forced to fetch to remand next turn, so I'm going to lead on Island here. Alright, opponent's Expedition map resolves. This time they may know to prioritize wastes, basic wastes, unfortunately. But we'll see what we can do about that. 2 Urza's Mines. Alright. So I still haven't found another red source, so this Scalding Tarn is going to have to be my red source instead of like 3rd basic island. That's not a huge deal, but it is something to keep in mind. So I'm probably going to fetch a Steam Vents tapped EOT. When it does grab that Wastes, playing around the moon. Not really worried about clicking them this soon. I'd rather just hold up remand. If my opponent doesn't do anything interesting or really anything at all, then I can go ahead and click. I think I would rather remand this. I don't hate drawing a land here, so we won't fetch first. That's very good. Now I really don't hate drawing a land, so I probably don't fetch, even though that's going to cost me a couple life points here. And then either I'm going to get to cantrip with this Cryptic, or I can loot with this Lighthouse, or I can click myself. If I loot or click myself, I'm basically on discarding Byforce, or putting Byforce on the bottom. It's not a huge deal. So that's going to resolve here, as it is not a Thought Knot. That doesn't matter. So I think I want to click myself here so that we have a more of a clock. And they're all, I mean, they're all cantripping. They're all equally likely for me to draw land. There's that land we wanted. Might as well save life points now. Oops, probably should have got a basic, but it really doesn't matter. Ceremonious Rejection, that's a good one. See how our opponent feels about this here breach. They are going to get a Matter Reshaper trigger. They might end up with a permanent in play. But they're going to take 18. Alright. Opponent does not feel the need to sack all their permanents. They've had enough. So, do we want to do anything differently? Do we care that we are on the draw now? Not really. I mean, you could argue Spell Snare is even more annoying here. Maybe or excuse me, Chalice is even more annoying here. Maybe we want Spell Snares to be able to counter it early, or Engineered Explosives to clean it up. I feel like those are both equally narrow cards, so I'd much rather have Explosives. Slightly like more mana intensive, as it costs 2 to explode, and potentially but potentially it's dealing with multiple chalices, and on top of that it can work after the fact, whereas Spell Snare obviously we have to have in hand when the Chalice is cast. So Spell Snare not a real consideration for me here. I think I would really only be interested in the Engineered Explosives, which I don't really need. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to cut anything here. Again, like, 4th Snapcaster, a little bit iffy, but I mean, we have Roasts. I mean, yes, they have Relics. I still think Bioforce is slightly better than the Explosives because it also cleans up Ballistas and Relics and all that other nonsense. Yeah. Yep. This hand looks pretty good. Sorry, I'm like spacing out a little bit here. We've got a Roast to answer a resolved threat. Ceremonious Rejection catches a lot from our opponent's deck, unless they have Cavern, I guess. But we have Roast to clean that up. Opt to help us kind of hit our land drops, half of our combo, and then Cryptic to kind of bridge that gap as well. Sort of a similar role to what the Opt is doing in this hand. If we can get to the 4th land at least, right? This buys us time towards more land drops, towards the breach, stuff like that. So we're just going to lead on Island here. Because I have the rejection, I'm going to leave up Opt rather than Serum Visions here. If we were like on the play, I would probably Serum Visions. This just resolves. I don't really feel like we should be dealing with that. All right. So I did just scry a click to the bottom, so this is a little bit awkward, but I still think it'd be correct to get another island here in case we find Blood Moon next turn. All right, so we got 4 lands, so this would be our 5th land in a breach, which of course is near exactly what we want to find. Let's protect the breach. Just make sure we don't fetch. Yep. Let's protect the breach from a Thought-Knot Seer. Our opponent's not going to take Emrakul most of the time with a TKS. Of course, I could just reject it, and I would if this situation is occurring when we still have this rejection in our hand. Yeah. So next turn we're going to Roast something and hold up rejection. It'll be nice and inconspicuous that we're trying to hold up rejection still because we are shocking ourselves with our only red source. Obviously we don't want to fetch with this Tarn, so we have the breach on top, as discussed. I'm going to Roast the Reshaper. It's just more damage right now. And with what we've got going on in our hand, I just want to buy myself time. See what they get off this trigger. Kind of an awkward exchange for us. Probably informs our opponent that we have the combo. Otherwise, we would not be willing to make such a poor value exchange. But this is not good for us, of course. That's one of the best things they can hit, if not the best thing, since it really unlocks their mana quite a bit. Fortunately, we do have this rejection. I'm going to reject this Smasher, but that's what my opponent is thinking about right now. Should I play around it? They elect to cast Thought-Knot Seer instead, which will also get a rejection, but this is totally fine with us. Doesn't really matter which they elect to cast. Next turn we'll have Cryptic into Breach. So as long as they're not casting multiple things that bother us, or perhaps playing a Cavern and a Smasher, even which I would be fine with still. So yeah, we should be pretty good to go here. Generally, I feel like in this matchup, if we can find the combo, we're in a pretty good spot. But there are those games with this deck. I mean, that's one of the drawbacks, that you just never find it. But this is one of those tough things about playing against this deck. Like, they have like Thought-Knot Seer to interact, but other than that, there's not a lot. And if we have it, we have it. Like, what are they going to do? They're not quite dead here, obviously. We do have to find a way to close the game, and we sided out our lightning bolts, but we have all 4 of our snaps, both of our clicks. We could obviously combo again, but that's a little less likely. And we still have this Cryptic and this Serum Visions, so it's not like, you know, we're sitting here doing nothing. Remand will also buy us some time. I probably get another island here. I don't imagine my opponent's going to deal with my Steam Vents somehow. I guess Ghost Quarter, but then I would get the mountain, so that's not a big deal. So, yeah. All right, bottom both of those. Snap is great. Hopefully our opponent plays something we can... I guess that doesn't matter. I should have just snapped Visions, actually. That's my mistake, sorry. It's not like holding up Cryptic does anything for me this turn. That's my bad. Play this land, bash with the snap. I still would have been able to hold up Remand through that if I had snap vision, so that would have been much better. Just got a little bit too excited. Cracking this fetch land, probably optimal there to get an island. Just gonna do it in my upkeep. I've recently turned off my upkeep stops. Because I felt like they were causing me to use a lot more time on Magic Online just because of input lag and stuff like that. So when I was playing decks that required a lot of clicks, like Amulet, I decided, you know what, let's turn off some upkeep stops and try like that and just be putting them on when I need them. I used to play with more stops. I've been trying to cut back a little bit to save time, but yeah, I should have set an upkeep stop or just set an EOT. It doesn't matter. I was going to fetch Basic Island either way, so I was just waiting till the last possible moment, but it's not like I really gained any advantage there. So either way, I think I should have fetched, but obviously not a huge deal. We were able to close that game out with that timely Snapcaster Mage, and I will see you in round number 2.